very much. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Good morning. How's it going? So I'm going to be talking about. I was thinking this is an interesting crowd because I do a lot of talks to statists and semi-statists, and I say crazy things like taxation might be theft. But this audience has heard that before, so I'm going to go a little bit different and talking about some analogies in talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and digital currency. Just to start to get a feel, how many people would consider themselves experts on digital currency? How pretty familiar with Bitcoin, digital currency, blockchain? How many people are not familiar at all? Okay, so kind of a mix. That's what I suspected. So the power of the word no is sort of central to everything that we believe and everything that we've talked about here. And whether it's Rosa Parks saying, Rosa, please move to the back of the bus. She says, no, wait a minute. Richard Spencer, you're not welcome here. Did I make anybody look? So whether it's Rosa Parks saying no, or is Mark Edge here? Mark Edge has these great videos. Hopefully you've seen them online. I actually saw those videos a long time before I became friends with Mark, where he's driving through these borderless, suspicionless stops. And they say, sir, can I have your information? Can you tell me your citizenship? No, thanks. Rosa Parks, no. Mark Edge, no thanks. My kids, I'm really proud of them when they say nah. Nah, even if sometimes they say it to me, and it's as a parent, it's a balance of saying, you want them to have free will and have that very powerful word, one of the most powerful words in our language, nah. It's really the central point to everything that we do. Or as Larkin Rose would say, fuck you. So the power of the word nah and no is something that I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to use a kind of an analogy. When we're fighting the government, we don't want to necessarily fight force on force. We don't want to be in a battle of strongest man wins. And I'm going to use a little martial arts analogy. I'm going to need a volunteer, somebody big and strong, preferably, maybe anybody with martial arts experience, or you don't have to. I'm not going to hurt you, or you're not going to hurt me, hopefully. Big, strong person, weightlifter, come on. I know somebody wants to raise their hand. I'm going to have to pick somebody if somebody doesn't. All right, here we go. Come on up. Let's give them a hand. So, there you go. So, and you can do that. Actually, you know what? Go ahead and stand up. This is first thing in the morning. You can do something here. Hopefully nobody get hurt. No, I'm just kidding. This will be, go ahead, stand up. We're going to do a little quick exercise, kind of a demonstration on thinking about force and conflict. So if you go ahead and just kind of stand in a comfortable stance, put your hands up. I don't think you won't need a mic, I don't think. Go ahead and put your hands, what's your name, by the way? Jason. So you put your hands up like this. This is a Tai Chi exercise. You try and push the other person over, okay? And you'll notice, so go ahead and push me. Okay, so I just go back. Now I've gone force on force like this. Go ahead and try it in a second with the person next to you. And if I push you, see, you've done this before, huh? So he went, or either that or have you done this before, or you just naturally, so he had a natural instinct to relax, which is exactly what you want to do. Now if you don't relax, you're going to go back. So the thing is with in martial arts is you don't want to be in a battle where strongest man wins. So just turn the person real quick to you next to you and just kind of put your hands to their hands and sort of feel their force and kind of, it's this exercise where you kind of, you push and the other one pushes against you, you go ahead and push against me, and you kind of get to the point where you're feeling their balance, and ideally, see, he's pretty good at it. Ideally, I can't really get him because he's going to go loose all the time, okay? I'll show you one other quick thing, same principle. Go ahead and put your hands like this, like you're going to choke me, okay? Now, this won't hurt you. But there's a million ways out of this. I could punch and kick and do this and stuff like that. But he's taller than me and stronger than me. I don't want to be in a battle of strongest man wins. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to show you the trick. I wouldn't show him if this was real. But I'm going to go as loose. Now, if I went to his neck, that would be okay. But if he's good and he's got technique, he may fight back against that. I may not win. So I'm going to go as loose and relaxed as I can with my hand. Now, hard as you can. Hold on. Hard. And I'm just gonna, just go like that. See that? See that? Now I'll let you try it on me because that's annoying, and I never want to do it to somebody without doing it. So I'm gonna hold you. First of all, try and poke me out. Try and poke me and get me off like that. Yeah, go ahead hard. See, it's kind of, I can fight him back. I don't want to do that. Now go real loose like I did. It just doesn't work. Now go ahead, try it. Try it to the person next to you. You're just gonna go real loose. Real loose. You're not gonna hurt. It won't hurt. It just feels a little annoying. You real loose like that. Somebody comes in, and you loosen your hand, and you just kind of put it right here. And they're not gonna be able to hold you. Now you can practice this after. See, it works, huh? All right, cool. Let's give him a hand. People get it to work? See me after if it didn't work. So the principle is, you don't want to be in a battle of strongest man wins, especially with the government, because we're pretty badass, right? But we don't really want to be in that fight, and it's not our thing. This is a peaceful movement, and it's peaceful people here. We don't really want to be in a fight, and frankly, we wouldn't really win if we were in a fight with the government. So you don't want to be in a strongest man wins battle. You want to just kind of move away, get out of the way. And you look at Muhammad Ali, greatest fighter in boxing. What's really impressive about him wasn't his incredible power. A lot of people had that. It's these and I recommend anybody go on YouTube and look at like highlights. It's how he just becomes air, invisible, and out of the way. He basically said, nah, no thanks, sorry, fuck you. Whatever, whether it's the Larkin Rose method or the Mark Edge method, he's evading and disappearing. And I think that the reason I use that analogy is because I think that's really what Bitcoin enables us to do. Bitcoin, and I'm going to use Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency all kind of interchangeably, sort of this technology as a whole, call it blockchain. What that enables us to do is say nah to the government in a way that we don't have to burn down the Federal Reserve, as fun as that may be, but it's also a violent act. We don't need to do that. We can just sort of say nah and get out of the way. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples about it. So if those of you who follow Bitcoin, there's this ETF right now. An ETF is basically kind of like a mutual fund. It's a pool of money. People put their money in to buy something. In this case, Bitcoin. So for years now, the Winklevoss brothers and a couple others have been trying to launch an ETF, which would allow people to buy Bitcoin. And the powers that be in their wisdom. I love those memes. Have you seen the memes? If it please the crown, if it please the crown, I'd like to buy what I want. But the crown in this case is the SEC, and they're fighting back for a long time on this. Hopefully it'll be approved. And what that'll do, I'll tell you two things about the ETF, part one and part two. Part one, it'll be amazing for Bitcoin. It'll be wonderful. I'm all for the ETF. I wish them the best. I hope it works. We could see huge inflows into Bitcoin because the way it works is it'll be traded on the open market. So every single person really in the world, certainly everywhere in America and almost most of the world, will be able to buy this vehicle and put $10,000 in it. They're going to buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. Right now, there's a couple million people who can buy Bitcoin through Coinbase or whatever. With this, there'll be tens and tens of millions of people. They won't be buying the direct Bitcoin, but pretty darn close. They'll be getting exposure to Bitcoin, just like buying a gold ETF or something like that. It's not quite as good as buying the real gold, but you're still getting exposure to the asset. And most importantly for Bitcoin, the Winklevoss brothers have to buy those coins to fill up this ETF. So if somebody buys $100,000 worth, they've got to go and buy $100,000 on the market. I'm simplifying it a little bit, but that's basically how it works. So you could see tens of millions, well, not could see, you will definitely, if it's approved, you will definitely see tens of millions of people able to get exposure to Bitcoin right away that they couldn't. And with that, I think will come a huge increase in price. I think you could see $1 billion flow. And $1 billion is a big deal in Bitcoin. It's nothing in the real financial world. That's a tiny fraction, way less than 1% of Amazon or Microsoft or Apple, the value of these companies. So we could see huge inflows. We could see $1 billion flow into Bitcoin. You could see Bitcoin go up way up. and you see all kinds of publicity and everything else, and then people take the technology more seriously. And then some of these people will say, just like you do with gold ETFs, I'm sure a lot of gold bugs are in the room. You may have bought gold through an ETF, and then later on your friend said, you know what, that's fractional reserves, it's not real. You know what, go ahead and buy real gold. And you may have kind of graduated to getting real gold coins. The ETF won't be fractional, but same kind of principle. People may look at it and say, hey, you know what, why do I need to be paying them a fee? I'm going to go to Coinbase or Bitstamp and buy my own Bitcoin. So it could be great. It's great. Now, I told you it's part one. Part two, what if I told you that we're going to enter a world where we won't need ETFs? I mean, eventually, what this technology is doing, it's the government and banking, it's like a frog in boiling water. They don't really know what is happening with this. So these clowns at the SEC who are debating whether to allow the people to put money where they want and allow the Winklevoss brothers to do what they want with their, couple $100 million worth of Bitcoin, they're all going to be obsolete because you won't need an ETF. Right now, today, you can issue a coin or a token that invests in whatever you want. It would be redundant to invest in Bitcoin, but I could have one that invests in Acapulco real estate or Apple stock or whatever. The technology exists now, and it's so vastly superior to what else we have that it's just inevitably going to take the place of the old systems, the mutual funds and the ETFs, and with that, all of the regulatory systems that go in place. So in the future, some years from now, why would Apple issue stock when you've got to go through issuance process and underwriters and an investment bank and a clearing agent and clearing firms and custodians and transfer agents? And if you ever see Patrick Byrne from Overstock, my good friend Patrick speak, he talks about DTCC and CD&Co and all that. He has a chart that's big mess of lines crossing about what really goes on in the stock market. You don't even really own these shares. Nobody really knows who owns them. It's a system going back to the days when Patrick was a young man. He would drive his bicycle around and deliver shares from one broker to another. And really that system has just been built on itself to this very inefficient and opaque system that doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone who's an issuer of a stock or a purchaser of a stock, why would anybody prefer that method to a system where I'll be able to pull out my phone and say, here's 100 shares of Apple stock from me to you instantly, just like I can do it with Bitcoin? It's a vastly superior model. So it's going to, a better mousetrap has been built, and it will take the place of the old systems. Now, here's the neat thing. If the governments realize the implications of that, thank goodness they're slow. They're not that bright. If they did, they would have killed all of us as soon as they could have back a couple of years ago when we had the first, 4 or 5 years ago when we had the first big Bitcoin meetings. They would have dropped a bomb on the Amsterdam Bitcoin Foundation meeting and been done with it. But the toothpaste is out of the tube. The better mousetrap has been built. The public is aware of it. It may take some time. There may be some roadblocks once they realize that they're going to do everything they can to stand in the way. But the interesting thing is this technology gets rid of centralization, and with that, jurisdiction. All right? I'm not a lawyer, but my friends who are lawyers tell me that one of the very first things that they dwell on is jurisdiction. It's one of the first things you do your first year law school. Jurisdiction's everything. Well, in the new world, in the world of cryptocurrency, jurisdiction is nothing because there's no way to know who has what. I have business ventures outside the U.S. I have business ventures in the U.S. When I transfer coins from the U.S. to overseas, there's only one person that knows that, and there's only one record. That's in my head. I go from this address to this address. Who's to say that that address is my foreign address or my local address or my Acapulco address or your address? It's completely open system that doesn't understand borders and doesn't care. And this is why the Winklevoss brothers have to deal with the SEC for this ETF now. But in the future, for other types of issuings, like I mentioned, if you wanted to do Acapulco real estate on a token, you could issue it here. And if the government didn't play ball here, you issue it in the U.S. And if the U.S. doesn't have a clue, you'd go to Estonia or Dubai or Ras Al Khaimah or Cayman Islands. Somebody or you do it in your garage, and you say, nah, when they ask for paperwork or whatever. It's jurisdiction disappears, and that's the power of the decentralization that is built into these technologies. And that's why it's so profound when you have a better model that everybody in the world can use. There's a great picture, you see these all the time on Reddit, or if you follow that kind of thing, if you're involved in Bitcoin, people will be walking around. I think somebody was they were in some town in Cambodia or Thailand or something like that, and they said, wow, they're walking along and there's this Bitcoin store. And I love seeing those things because nobody had to call me or is Roger here yet? Roger from Bitcoin.com or anybody. Nobody had to get permission to do that. There's no central authority. There's no founders. There's a founder, but we don't know who it is. But there's no owners or controllers or CEO of Bitcoin. And people can do whatever they want. And so you have now, for the first time in history, truly universal global currency that even gold coins, which are a pain in the neck, you got to carry them, the customs will seize them, and a million other things. Even those, gold coin here is not going to be the same in Cambodia. They're going to have to weigh it, and some places use grams, some use ounces. There's different, varying gold. I've bought gold before overseas, and I've had to do the math on. There's a big difference between 14 karat and 24 karat. You want to know what you're getting and what it weighs and this kind of stuff. And that all relates to the spot price. Well, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's the same, and that's the same for any of these currencies. If you do this, Acapulco real estate token, or you do Ethereum or Dash or Monero, they're the same everywhere. So that's a really powerful thing, and nobody can stop that. So what I think we're going to see a lot of is this increasing decentralization and increasing, spreading out of power, which really enables people to say, nah, you're not going to let me issue it here? Nah, I'll issue it over here. I'll go to another country. I'll issue it anonymously. There's any number of ways that people can deal with this kind of stuff. And then you're going to see actual applications built on top of that, which follow the same principle. My friend Eric Voorhees wanted to do an exchange of some sort in this cryptocurrency world. He's a very early adopter, real cool guy, and he's one of us too. He's an anarchist, and you wanna, if you don't know him, check him out, read his stuff online. He writes a blog, and he speaks sometimes. So he looked at the mountain of regulations that they had, which at the time weren't even clear, and they're getting more clear, but also more hassling on custody and this and compliance officers and all these things. He just said, no thanks. He didn't break the law. He just sidestepped the law with better technology. So instead of a conventional exchange, he just made a computer program. That's it. That's all his entire company is. That's what Shapeshift is. Just like Uber. It's just a computer program. And that program enables you to take your phone, and I can put in my Bitcoin and get out Ethereum. And I can put in my Ethereum and get out Dash. Or I can take Tether, which is tied to the US dollar. I can put in my US dollar and buy Bitcoin. And he never takes his custody of client funds, never even knows who the customers are. So when they say, let me see your customer list, we want to know anti-money laundering because we have suspicion that people may know someone who has bought a forbidden plant, he doesn't even know who they are. And so he's completely sidestepped the regulations. And I really think I use his example a lot because I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more cases where people use this technology that's already decentralized, and they create better models and more exciting models that will sidestep all of the regulatory issues. And again, that sounds cool. And you think about it, you say, yeah, that is pretty cool. This guy made a computer program to avoid being exchanged. He doesn't have to work. Not only is it a better business model, he avoids all kinds of compliance hassles, it's also safer. He doesn't have custody of client funds. He had a terrible hack from an inside job, but it was a tiny, they couldn't steal anything because they didn't really have any customer money. They just had a kind of a temporary buffer that they keep that was the company's money, and Eric paid it back. So they lost $300,000 instead of 70 million or 80 million or 600 million in the case of Mt. Gox, because they don't even have the custody of the client funds. So it's a better model, and at first glance you say, yeah, that's pretty cool, but again, you think about the implications about this. Think about what this really means. This means that there's going to be, that's a superior model, and that's going to be the model that goes forward, where people say, nah, I'm not going to go through this process that the Winklevoss brothers are going through. I'm not going to file S1s and this and this and this and this to have your permission to have people buy and sell stuff. And it's going to be a big smack back to the regulators for a vast overreach that they've had over the last 20 and 30 years. 30 years ago, this notion that government has the business of knowing where your money is or whose money is what, it's really relatively new. We didn't, 30 years ago, the governments didn't, they didn't track things the way that they do now. We've become so used to it now that we think, oh yeah, of course. When I started as a financial advisor, you could open an account with me at Morgan Stanley over the phone with no ID. And you could actually invest, and you didn't have to pay for a week. So I could call you up on the phone, and you could say, sure, I want to buy 100 shares of Microsoft. I'll say, okay, great. I get your name, your date of birth. I don't even think we did social. And your address. And I'd say, okay, pay me within a week. And that was it. That's how you open a brokerage account. They didn't have to sign anything. I didn't need their ID. I'm not that old. This isn't that long ago. This is in recent history. And remember, credit cards have only been used the last 30 years or so. They've been around 50, 60 years, but I remember 30 years ago, it was very rare. Movie theaters, no movie theater accepted credit card. Restaurants, it was kind of unusual, only high-end ones. Travel agents would, but nothing like now. Now everything is credit cards, debit cards. So there's this huge paper trail, and governments have gotten this idea that they have the business to do this. But I think this technology is going to be a really exciting way to smack them back. Where they were, smacking back to where they were 30 years ago, that would be a start. Ideally, we want to smack them off the board entirely. And I think that at the end of the day, what this technology does, it enables you to say nah, to say no, no thanks, in a way that is not violent, that is peaceful. You just kind of move out of the way like Muhammad Ali, and they're going to be punching air, and eventually they're going to come crashing down like a sumo wrestler who overstepped on the line. They're going to come crashing down under their own weight, and these systems are going to have a massive blow to banking and government financial systems. That's going to be a huge, huge, huge thing for liberty, and I think that's really, really something to be excited about. So, I have plenty of time for questions. I'll go ahead and I can answer anything about Bitcoin, blockchain, anything like that. Go ahead. Oh, you need a mic? Oh, wait, I'll go ahead and can you play that video? I got a quick video I'll show you just to close before I do the questions. I think you get a quick out of the, let me just set the stage for it. You remember when the government shut down? It was horrible, a tragic thing, 2012? We had that government shutdown that lasted 30 days. Probably nobody even remembers it. But at the time, it was horrible, 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 scary thing. So I was so traumatized, I made this quick video. Let me just show you real quick. So I wanted to talk a little bit about today's news. Wait a minute, what? It says the government might shut down. My government, my roads. My government, roads. My road! My road! My government! He's gone! Thanks. Never forget that fateful time. Could happen again. I don't know what
First of all, is that on YouTube?
That is on YouTube.
Okay, well, I'll have to look it up. There's a lot of people.
There's also one called Economic Geek Fights Keynesians. So that's kind of funny, or for us anyway.
Yeah, so what's the difference? I think I know, but could you explain the difference between what the Winklevoss twins are doing and like just a stock like BTC or?
Sure. So GBTC is a slightly different vehicle. Barry Silbert is a really experienced Wall Street operator, and he wanted to get, pretty smart, he wanted to get kind of first to market. So he basically made a type of offering that you could be publicly traded that holds Bitcoin. But he can only hold certain amounts, and you can't, when you have shares that are out there, like Apple shares, if I go buy Apple shares, I'm not buying new Apple shares, I'm buying somebody else's Apple shares. Only if Apple issues new shares, which they almost never do. I don't even know when Apple has done it. It's probably been ages, other than weird examples like employee options and stuff. So it's just there. So you can buy more Apple shares, but you're, they're not new shares being issued. So with GBTC, that exists now, and you can trade, but you'll notice it trades at a premium because it has a finite supply. There's only a certain amount of Bitcoin in it, and there's ways that he can kind of add more Bitcoin, and they've done that a little bit, but bottom line, it's not as good as an ETF, where an ETF, it has whatever's in it, and every dollar that's put, there's no limit on it. Whatever is put in, you can put in. If it starts with 100 million and they put in another 100, guess what? They're going to have to buy 100 million of Bitcoin. And if it goes crazy and the price goes up to 3,000 or 4,000, people are going to see that, and they're going to buy it, and they're going to honor those orders. There's no such thing as ETF where they say, oh, sorry, we ran out. They can't run out of Bitcoin. As long as one person in the world is willing to sell one fraction for any price, which they are, I'll sell a fraction of one for some price, then that will, that will exist. So the ETF is really exciting because, although, I have mixed feelings about it. I actually thought about doing it myself. I think it's a great idea. If I would have known it was going to take them so long, I would have tried myself and banged my own head against the wall with regulators trying to do it. So I think it's a great idea, and I wish them all the best. But it is a buggy whip. You're building a better buggy whip for when in an age of horses, when cars are coming around the corner. And so we're not going to need ETFs. That ETF may be a great thing, just like AOL was a great thing for 5 years, but long term we're not going to need that. Go ahead, Tone.
Hey Bruce, Tone Vays. So earlier at this conference, I actually talked about how terrible the ETF would be for the Bitcoin system, and I thought maybe you can comment on my reasons for that. I have hours and hours of video, but I'll just sum it up real quick. One of them is it centralizes Bitcoin in one giant honeypot that risks getting hacked, like a Mt. Gox moral hazard. Yep. Another huge problem is that people don't really own the Bitcoins. They are owned by an entity. That entity is under the control of the government in question. In this case, it would be the US government, which can then come in and just say, oh, it's ours now, and we have 10%, 15% of all Bitcoins. Yep. Those are just some of the reasons. I have a lot more. Maybe you can comment on some of those.
Yeah, those are good points. The honeypot thing is real. Hopefully we've moved beyond the days of Mt. Gox. Hopefully we have better quality controls and better systems in place. Hopefully the Winklevoss brothers are taking it, much more seriously. It's a whole different level of professionalism and everything else, better practices. But yeah, that is a risk. Not owning your own Bitcoins, that's absolutely true, and that's the same argument that you have with ETFs. Like I said, there's people here, I'm sure, who own gold ETFs, but you don't really own that gold. And it is if you're comparing it to Bitcoin, it is a far distant alternative. I agree with you on that. It's nowhere near as good as real Bitcoin. But overall, I think it will help. I hope I'm right. We don't know if it'll even be approved, and only time will tell. Certainly, if there is some kind of catastrophic issue with a hack, that would be bad. Government seizing it, yeah, of course, definitely. That you are. When I say it's good, I'm mainly talking it's good because there's a million or so people that buy Bitcoin, and there's 100,000 who are really kind of active in it, and then there's a couple thousand who are really active in it, and then there's some number of dozens like you who are really into it. But there's tens of millions of people out there who just, as a former, financial advisor, the barrier to move from Morgan Stanley to Merrill Lynch is huge. It's so huge, in fact, you can make $1 billion if you can get people to do it. Anybody in this room can become a billionaire. All you have to do is convince people to move their accounts from Fidelity to you. or Charles Schwab to you, or Merrill Lynch to Morgan Stanley, and you get a job at Morgan Stanley, you can make $1 billion. And you don't need all of Fidelity's accounts. You need one tiny sliver of 1%, and you can become a billionaire. If you get 100 people who are millionaires to move their account over in your entire career, you're going to make $300,000 a year or so, just from 100 people. And there's tens and tens of millions. So it's very hard to get people to switch from one thing to another. And the burden, now I love Coinbase. I opened a Coinbase account. I opened a Mt. Gox account. I opened all these accounts. I'll do it easily and instantly. But the people who buy this are not the normal people. The normal dentists who have a couple $1,000,000 in their Merrill Lynch account, it's an insurmountable hurdle for them to open up, to go from Merrill to Morgan Stanley. I spent my whole career at Morgan Stanley just trying to get people to move from one firm to another, to go from Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, Charles Schwab to some crazy thing like Coinbase. It's just an insurmountable hurdle for most people. And what the ETF will do is it enables them to do it in a system that they're used to. Now, I don't like the system that they're used to. I agree with you. I don't like that system. That's why I left that system. I broke out of that system and dedicated to this better new system. But it does still exist, so it'll be like AOL. It'll be, AOL is not the real internet, but it'll be a nice stepping stone, hopefully, for people to move forward. And your other point about government being able to seize it, absolutely, it's true. But it's also true of everybody in that system. You have basically the whole world, and you have this tiny, tiny, tiny little number of people in cryptocurrency. We have our money, and we actually own our money, but nobody else does. So the ETF will have drawbacks where the government can just say, I'm taking your money, but they can do that now with a gold ETF or a silver ETF or Microsoft stock. They seize money all the time. We had clients get their money seized. It was always the worst thing ever was when somebody would get their money seized for the IRS. I personally had to write millions of dollars worth of checks to the IRS because we'd get seizure letters where a client, they'd say, it's not their money anymore, it's our money. And I had to call the clients and say, hey, sorry, the guys with guns are taking your money. And there's nothing I could do. I mean, I couldn't even physically stop it if I could. I didn't have like there's no override switch on my computer. It's basically just a note that's like, hey, just as a courtesy, we're letting you know that your client's money's gone, and you've cut a check. And so that is a weakness of the system. But that's the thing where in this new world, those systems are going to be smashed and destroyed because I think hopefully people go into the ETF, whether the ETF works or not, eventually, hopefully, this superior technology of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, altcoins, that will work. And when it does, you won't need any of this. And then they won't be able to seize the money. Other questions? In the back. Okay, you first, then you. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you for the talk. You mentioned Patrick Byrne over at Overstock, and I wanted to see if you could give us any information, if you know about it, about T0, the trading platform that he's building, the blockchain-based like certificate stock trading, bond trading platform.
I can talk a little bit about it. I'm pretty close with those guys, and I don't want to accidentally say anything that's confidential, so I don't want to get too detailed. But basically, I can channel Patrick for a minute, which is the old systems that I alluded to a little bit are really, really messed up. Nobody actually owns your own stock. I mean, like Tone said, they can seize it. Well, the truth is one step worse. You never actually owned it in the first place. If you have an account at Charles Schwab or Merrill Lynch or Fidelity or anybody else, any real investment firm, you don't actually own it. When you sign your paperwork and you have those pages and pages of paperwork that you fill out at the end, what that says is a big complex thing. And I'm not talking about hypothecation where you loan your shares for people to do margin. I'm talking about the actual name that those shares are registered in. If you buy shares in a startup that somebody has, you actually have shares that have your name on it. Your name is not on any shares anywhere if you have Apple stock in a Fidelity account or a Merrill Lynch account. It's held through this very, very complex system where this company called CD & Co. really owns everything in its name, and this company, DTCC, does all the settlement, and there's all these different things, transfer agents, and it's a big, messy, complex system. And what Patrick and T0 believe, by the way, T0 and Medici is a division of Overstock. Overstock, as you know, is a leading retailer, online retailer, great company. And Patrick was the CEO who's one of us also, was very interested in this technology early, and he accepted Bitcoin and did some other things. And so they've actually created a whole division. They've made investments in companies like Bit and others, where they're looking to disrupt this. They're looking to disrupt this system and say, you know, we don't need this big complex system. We can have people actually own what they own. So they're working on realizing that model that I mentioned, which is to have people actually own their own stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not a real sophisticated investor. I'm just learning about Bitcoin, and this talk about the ETF. If it were to happen, and the atomic bomb were dropped on the ETF, in other words, the government were to seize everything, since those Bitcoins were bought for real from real people, so it would take X amount of Bitcoins out of the system, that would skyrocket the price, would it not? And then a follow-up question to that, if they could get their hands on all the Bitcoin, it would just mean that the people that had sold their Bitcoins to the ETF would then would have gotten paid for the Bitcoins they owned, and then there'd be another cryptocurrency to go into, correct? It would just destroy Bitcoin, but it wouldn't destroy the market.
So the way it works, so there's two risks. I mean, I think what you might be talking about is there a risk where the government suddenly says, okay, to screw Bitcoin, we're going to take the Bitcoins. I think that's very, very unlikely, really. I mean, as bad as they may hate Bitcoin or decide they want to kill Bitcoin, there's a lot of other ways that they would try and do that. Despite all of our issues in the U.S., we have been pretty good about property rights and laws. It would be completely unprecedented for them to just seize all of the assets of all of the people who own the ETF. I can't even think of anything even close to that has happened. You know, you never know. There's always a first time for anything. But I don't think that's really a big risk. You know, the bigger risk is that somebody says, you know, they don't like this particular guy because he didn't pay his taxes or he sold a forbidden plant or something, they take his. But that's a risk that he has at anybody in the mainstream system. You have that risk if you're at Fidelity. They don't care whether it's Bitcoin ETF or gold ETF or Microsoft stock or the Fidelity Growth Fund. They're just going to take it. And when they took it, they would own shares in that ETF. They wouldn't actually own the underlying Bitcoin. So it is isolated one more step. So they'd have the shares in the ETF. And the government, in those cases, they typically just auction it or get rid of it or liquidate it. And they do that all the time. They do it hundreds and hundreds of times, you know, a year. So I wouldn't worry about that too much, despite all the faults that they have. I don't think that there's a big systematic risk to Bitcoin itself from that. Just the main risk that you would have by being part of the, you know, old broken corrupt financial system. But like I said, with this technology, it's the great way for us to non-violently and very easily say, you know, no thanks, nah, F you. We're going to do a better way. And
Bruce, we have 1 minute
topple
for
these guys
one
down.
quick question.
Any one last quick question? Sure.
This morning I read a news article that SpaceX wants to put 2 men on the moon. I was wondering how we can beat them and like getting towards the moon.
How to beat who?
How to beat SpaceX, because they want to put 2 men on the moon by 2018.
And we want to get Bitcoin to the moon?
Exactly. And seriously, I don't mean actually like as like the price of Bitcoin, but more like the usage of Bitcoin. So people who really need Bitcoin. In my opinion, as like people in Venezuela, I was last year there, and this is like $2 worth of money. And it's like the government just continues to print, and it's really, really terrible over there. Considering all the technical knowledge you kind of need to really use Bitcoin, I mean, like you hold your private keys, not like you invest in an ETF. How do we gonna make that easier for more people to access?
Well, the good news is there's a lot of people working on it to make it easier. Wallets are easier. When I bought my first Bitcoin, it was like a 10-step process. I had to wait 10 days. I had to go through Dwolla and then get the money to wherever. And the first people before me, it was even harder. Now it's pretty easy. You can open a Coinbase account on your phone and you can do it. So it is getting easier. And I'd say, how do we get to the moon? Just keep doing what we're doing. You know, it's been slower in some ways than it could have been, but it's also been pretty extraordinary. We're the 40th largest currency in the world now, and we see exciting things. And like I said, the toothpaste can't be put back in the tube. You know, that Bitcoin store in Cambodia isn't just going to get shut down someday. Very unlikely. And if they are, there's 2 others that can take their place. So it's a really great way to destroy these old systems without firing a single shot.
Excellent.
Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Fenyk.
Thanks. Thank you.
In a world where Antifa riots in the city streets, cops rage out of control, and the leader of the free world is a fat-ass casino owner, one event stands alone to make anarchy great again.
I actually love humanity. That is why I'm an anarchist.
Backwards in the building like we the ceiling, we illin'. No matter who find it appealing, I'm here and I got a feeling that we'll be dealing a lot of pain with a penicillin get drilled in your head. That we are monsters and yeah, we come from the slums and for months we've been pumped, but for once I am now comfortable. I want to grow, I want some more success, and I want to know that greatness can't be rushed, can't be lost, so face the bus. Feel free to hate on us, we lace them up. Dudes, we done paid them up. Keep snakes away from us and safe from us, you might wanna be. Remember when clowns used to make fun of me and now they wanna be me. See me and they run at me, I'm gonna be the greatest, yeah I wanna be, but I am not the one to be the fakest for the sake of being played. I'm here, like I never left, said to hell. Nah, cause I can't just fail, so just prepare your ears, it'll get for real. Okay, from here, we will never take the sale, it's grind time. My mind and my thoughts, my highs and my faults, my wins and my loss. When will I fall off? It's a chance for me. You are now listening to Veracity. Yeah.
Fuck the media, fuck the banks, fuck drone strikes, fuck tanks, fuck hunger, fuck war, fuck ignoring of the poor, fuck the left, fuck the right, fuck the government. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.